Well, hello and welcome to this month's First Friday at Fusion Studio. I'm Rich Dione, co-director of Purdue's Fusion Studio for Entertainment and Engineering.
And I'm Mary Pilot. I'm the co-director of the Fusion Studio with Rich.
Yes, sorry, I was going to say something about that, but I'm not going to say it yet.
Okay.
I'll wait for maybe a future First Friday. I want to take a moment to thank Erica Quam for letting us set up today in the Patty and Rusty Rueff Galleries here in Pao Hall on Purdue's campus, where we are surrounded today by posters from the Visual Communication Design Program's Juried Poster Exhibition.
Beautiful.
Which is really cool. I wish that I had that kind of graphic design ability. We have an exciting event packed event for you all today. Joining us from the University of Iowa is Denise Szecsei. Denise teaches math and computer science and will be sharing her robot theater project, which introduces students to coding and other STEM subjects by having them choreograph dances and stage scenes with programmable robots. She's going to walk us through together, going from a short script to a performance. We're also joined by Josh Montgomery from Southern State Community College in Ohio, where he teaches computer science. He's going to talk to us about the Droid Builders Mini Dome and the Grant Imahara Coding Challenge, which teaches students to program using 3D printed replica R2-D2 domes from Star Wars. I'm sure somewhere there's some kind of disclaimer we have to make about IP. So there it is. It's a lot to cover in a really short amount of time, so I'm going to turn things over right away to Josh, who's going to get us started. So Josh, welcome.
Thank you, Rich. Excited to be here. I'm going to first start off with sharing my screen and start going through a little PowerPoint presentation I've made for you guys today. I'm sorry I'm not physically there. We'd planned to actually be on site, but we'll do this virtually and we'll have a lot of fun with this as well. So let me share my screen. All right, Rich, can you see this okay? Perfect. All right, so this is the teaching tool used for programming. It's the STEM mini domes. Dr. Josh Montgomery, and we'll go ahead and talk about what is this. Rich kind of gave a little bit of a drop of what this is, but I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about this teaching tool. So this is a little 50% scaled R2-D2 dome that is used as a teaching tool for students. It's primarily designed for a presentation I was giving at Star Wars Celebration in 2022. The Droid Builder STEM coordinator, Nancy Shunke, asked me to build some kind of robot to do some kind of coding. So I went a little further than I probably should have, but we 3D printed 20-some domes and made these little domes that kids could program anywhere from middle school to high school and learn how to move motors, play sounds, blink lights, all those fun things you get that R2-D2's dome can do. So this became a tool that we could use. From this little tool, we decided, man, wouldn't it be great if teachers could do this in their classroom? So what would that look like? So students would get the opportunity of 3D printing this 50% scaled version of the dome, install all these electronics, wire this dome, and then perform a set of functions by a remote control. Teachers, throughout this process, would have the ability of teaching a step-by-step instruction on how to do this. Through the process, we've developed 22 lessons that teachers can actually utilize to actually make their own little mini dome in their classroom, and students can do this whole operation. Now, through this whole process of building this wonderful little project, we've decided to call it the Grant Imahara Coding Challenge. Now, if you don't know who Grant Imahara is, Grant worked for Lucasfilms for many years, and Grant was an engineer that worked on R2-D2. Grant was also in Mythbusters, and throughout this process, Grant unfortunately passed away about a year or so ago, and the Grant Imahara Foundation was built in his name. It is ran by Mr. Don Bice. Mr. Don Bice is the president of the foundation, who reached out to me when he saw the little domes at Star Wars Celebration and said, hey, we should collaborate. So we decided, what would this look like if the foundation put some funding and tried to make this an actual lesson for students? And so we called this the Grant Imahara Coding Challenge, where students get the opportunity of building their own little domes, and teachers get the opportunity of teaching students this whole process of doing this. So just like Grant, students too can build their own little mini domes. So what students learn through the process of building their own little domes? Well, they learn about 3D printing. They got these little mini 50% scaled domes. They learn about painting methods and working with these 3D printed processes. And if you've ever worked with any kind of 3D printing, you know, painting and sanding is a lot more than you anticipated to do. And we wanted the kids to have the opportunity to paint any way they want to. And you'll see some of the painting operations of some of the kids that are actually doing this project right now here in a little bit. Students will also learn about electronics, wiring up their domes, building a little remote control to make that happen. And of course, the coding of the actual domes will be taking place as well. So kids get the opportunity to code up their domes, use a little remote control, and make operations take place in this area. Example of codes you can see on the screen there of events and variables and algorithms that we teach throughout the lessons where students go through this project of making their own little mini domes. And I find that if you're giving a student the ability to do something like this, especially in something that's fun, like, who doesn't love R2-D2, one of the best robots in the galaxy, right? Doing something from that standpoint, instead of just making a motor move, making a panel of his actual dome moves, a lot more fun. And so that engagement is really there. And so we can engage a student in something that they love to do, these passion projects, that really helps a lot. So when we were thinking about, more than just me doing this with groups of students, what would teachers have to do to make this happen? So we made a build guide, a curriculum, you may say, to provide educators the ability to do this. We developed 22 lessons in total. You can see a table of contents of everything that goes through the process of building this. It's a total of 8 sections, curriculum. There's videos of me showing step by step of how to do this and how students can perform this. And here in just a little bit, I'll talk some more about, we actually have groups of students doing this right now as our first go ahead of a year-long project of groups of students doing this in their actual schools. So we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. So who supports this project? Originally, this was supported by the Droid Builders organization, the STEM coordinator, Ms. Shunke, who had reached out to me, and Mr. Steele, who runs that organization's conference stuff, reached out to me. And so that was originally who had worked on this. The Grandma Hara Foundation got involved in this project from the work in STEAM. Mr. Badley's printed droids, which I know Rich is involved with as well. Mr. Michael Badley is who helped us with the 3D design of the R2-D2 domes, comes from him. The work that we did was split it in half and make it hinge so students can get in there and work on the actual domes. Made it a lot easier than flipping the dome upside down. We did a few other small modifications to the domes. My little wonderful community college, Southern State, who supported us in funding and working this project, and the Ohio Coders Project, which is an official project through them that a teacher could apply for and get funding to actually make these domes, which is pretty great because each dome costs a little bit of money to make, 3D printing and so forth. It's about $60 to $70 to make a dome. So it's good to have funding, right? So who's involved in the project right now? So we started off with this being a conference and teaching a class, involved into the Grandma Hara Coding Challenge where it is right now. And we currently have 5 schools and 6 teachers building 88 domes with 122 students involved. And I'll tell you what, for a volunteer thing that I'm doing for this wonderful little project, it's a lot of work, but been very rewarding. I've got a chance to visit these schools. You can see some of the pictures of the kiddos sanding and painting, and it's been a lot of fun. I've had a lot of schools contact me wanting to get involved. We've kind of pumped the brakes a little bit until we go through this cycle 1 year, and then everyone will have access to all of this information and what we're doing with this. At the end of all of this, we're doing a Grandma Hara Coding Challenge Symposium celebration. We're bringing all the domes into one location and we're judging them and giving out awards for all the kids, and really want to celebrate the work that they've done through these 22 lessons and all the work these teachers have done. We're going to give out awards for like best paint job, craziest wiring design, all those kind of fun things that we could do when we kind of come together on something like this. And you kind of see one of the young students over here, she painted a little dome. This is a little pastel color. That's a really neat design that I really wasn't thinking about. And so I'm really excited to see the coloring and sequences that we're doing. Right now in the project, we started at the beginning of the school year. So we know we're here about beginning of December timeframe. Most of the paintings happening right now, and we go into after December and January, we'll start into the mechanical wiring and processes there. Before we ever started the challenge, I did bring a bunch of the teachers in that decided they wanted to do this. And we did a little thing in my computer lab, and I taught them all how this would actually work. And there's Mr. Crichton there showing off his dome, getting it to work, and you can kind of see the domes a little bit here, and some of the teachers and students talking about them. You can see that they're split and cut right here, so you can open them up and do some work inside of those. There's a better picture of that. So the domes are 3D printed in basically 4 pieces. This is 2 of the main pieces here that are hinged on the side. Then we have some electronics here that you wire up. And then a little remote control, the Grandma Hard Coding Challenge little remote, which is just a few buttons and some wires going in here. And we teach students how to make functions out of these 3 buttons to do something of that nature. So this is, how could you do this? If you're interested or if you have some school you would like to get involved in this, well, hey, we got good news for you. It's free, that kind of. No money goes to us, the Droid Builders organization or me, but some of the supplies cost a little bit of money. Just not a lot, but it does cost a little bit to do one dome. It's less than $100 to do a dome, so it's definitely doable. And you do have to have a big enough 3D printer to print these. So you can contact me directly. There's my email, my LinkedIn. If you have any questions, I will send you a whole build guide that has all the information on there. We've gone through 10 versions of it. It's fully free. You're welcome to have it. I believe it's on Mr. Badley's printed droids page as well. And we have it in a couple places, but you can contact me. I'd be happy to show you or send that to you so you can work on that. Right. I think I got a few more minutes. I don't think we're doing questions right now, I believe, Rich, but I do want to do a demonstration of the domes. Is that okay if I go ahead and do a demonstration? Fantastic. So I've got set up over here on the side. Let me go ahead and end my slideshow here really quickly. I've got a little dome here on the side. Can you guys see that okay? Is that a yes? Thumbs up. Yep, there we go. There's our little dome. So I got a little dome sitting over here to the side and kind of see my hand. Sorry, I had a coffee cup in there as well. I'm gonna go ahead and plug in one of the little domes. You can kind of see the domes are kind of set here and split, so you can open them up and do wiring inside of them. This is what an ending dome looks like. This is a pretty pink one. One of my favorites here. And I've coded this up. You could, one of the parts of the challenge is students can do really anything they want to off these buttons. I have it coded up just to hit a button to play a blink of light. There you go, R2. Play a sound and open a panel. We also can play an iconic sounds like the Star Wars theme, right? Nobody knows that song. From John Williams. And because I always like to do this with my R2D2, I think it's always fun. We can do just a little bit of dancing. Who doesn't love the cantina music, right? It's always a lot of fun. So that is the STEM mini domes. I'll be happy to take any questions here at the end of all of this. Thank you, Rich.
Josh, thank you. That was really cool. Josh and I were talking before. I've actually been trying to build a full-size 3D printed R2D2 with the same 3D printed files from Mr. Badley's website, and now I'm very upset that I haven't had time to work on it in a couple of months. So now maybe that's this weekend. Maybe that's what I'll do. Denise, how are you doing in your neck of the woods?
I've troubleshooted as best as I can, but I'm ready to go.
Well, then let's see what we can do. So Denise, we're going to turn to you and let you take this over.
Great. So I'll share my screen and yeah, so what I wanted to share today was the process of going from a script to a scene as far as robot theater goes, and demonstrate ideally the 3 different stages. But today it's 2 stages and 1 stage of grief. So the idea with robot theater is, well, what is it? First of all, when I talk to people about robot theater, there's sort of this look of confusion and, you know, like it sounds cool, but what? So pre-COVID, what I had was a group of now humanoid robots that we would program to perform theatrical skits in front of a live human audience. And it started out with dance, but dancing is hard on the physical body, the human body, as well as the robot body. And these robots are expensive. And so my protective nature came out and said, theater is much safer, unless it's a Spider-Man theatrical performance, perhaps. But We changed over to robot theater after the first class, and every class ended with a theatrical performance in front of a live audience. I taught workshops where it was a 1-week workshop, and at the end of a week we had a production, a 5-week first-year seminar, and at the end of 5 weeks we had a production, a semester-long course. At the end of the semester we had our recital or our production. So it's always ending with the show must go on, like I'm facing today. And no amount of rehearsal and preparation can take care of every single problem. The robots are persnickety. But then COVID hit, and so my live performances were shut down, and so I had to come up with something different to do with the robots. And so I decided to learn about video production and start to create and put together, one piece at a time, a virtual video production studio. And that way I could program the robots to perform their theatrical skits in front of a virtual audience. So that's sort of the direction that I've taken it, but I still like to get out onto the stage when possible. But the robots are a little rusty, and they probably need firmware updates and things like that, they need attention over the winter break. So as far as the robot theater acting company goes, what we have, and the problem I'm running into today, is the robots have to be able to connect to the network in order to at least connect with a computer or connect with each other. And today, 4 of my 5 robots have decided to not connect to the network. So one, Jackie, is a trooper. So that's the one I'm going to be able to use for part of today's demonstration. So what I have set up as far as networking goes is a Raspberry Pi chat server that basically just takes messages and sends messages. So that way the robots can communicate with each other via Wi-Fi or via Ethernet and today I've been motivated now to figure out how to hardwire and Ethernet my robots together to avoid these Wi-Fi issues, but they need to be able to talk to each other. Currently, I have 10 now robots. I have 40 Cosmo robots. I don't think I have one in my office here, but I have 4 vector robots, and I am the human DJ. As far as our supporting technology goes, things that we've done to connect external or third-party devices to our robots, obviously the Raspberry Pi for communication, Leap Motion for hand gestures. We've programmed the robots to basically play the hokey pokey along with the Leap Motion sensor. Myo armband, where I can use different gestures and muscle contractions to send messages to the robots to perform certain activities. I've had the robots connected to the Amazon's various components. I can't say any of their names here because they're listening all the time, but She Who Must Not Be Named, dash buttons, echo buttons, things like that. Also Deep Racer and Deep Composer. I've tried to incorporate AI and machine learning into the project. NVIDIA has made a Jetson little board along the lines of the Raspberry Pi, and there's a good community of people developing things like the JetBot so that you can have autonomous driving. And so I've wanted to combine robots and at least the now robots and Cosmo robots and the JetBot cars on the road to really complicate the scene. But that takes a lot of puppet mastery. And then iPhone, iPad, mobile devices being able to interface and connect and control the robots. And then also things like an Xbox controller. We've used that so that we can control the motion. So it's really fun to, when it works, to connect the hardware to or incorporate various hardware components into the production sensors. For example, I could have robots respond to temperature, etc. So here are just a couple of images of various productions that we've had. I had a group of students work on an abridged version of Romeo and Juliet, And so there I believe there were 9 robots total, but maybe 7 in the picture, and 1 human narrator to keep the story moving. So that was a challenge because each robot has a mind of its own, and sometimes they cooperate and sometimes they don't. So having imagine 7 little kids on the stage, and you're hoping that they will all behave and do what you want them to do. And then the second image was from a first-year seminar where the theme was robots going to summer camp. And so the students wrote skits about what would a robot summer camp look like. And then we ended with a campfire where all of the robots told a scary story. And so the students had to imagine what would a scary story look like to a robot. So it's a great opportunity to incorporate the language arts, performing arts, that creative side, along with the technical side of programming robots and getting them to do what you want them to do and not what they want to do. So what I'm interested in at this point is the process and developing process tools to streamline going from a script to a production. There have been several iterations of how to write a program or at least how to structure the program for the robots to carry out all of the parts, the roles, delivering the dialogue, having the movements that go along with it, etc. So right now, one of the things we did was we developed these gesture libraries to think about what do we do? How do humans gesture? How do we just convey emotion through our gestures? And then how can we program the robots to perform those gestures and convey those emotions? Because now robots have very static faces, so they can't smile and have that interaction. So focusing on movement awareness and working with actors and dancers and people who are very aware of body mechanics has been helpful. What I'm working on now is to develop or create to build a computer that can do natural language processing and take a script or a block of dialogue and parse it and attach or assign some sort of sentiment or emotion to it, and then basically direct the robot as to what to say and how to say it. So having one giant puppet master controlling the robots. I've been also working with movement because some of my robots walk like drunken sailors. They think they're walking in a straight line, but they're not. And so trying to either control their movement with an Xbox controller or using some sort of mapping system so that the robots can have a better idea of where they are in the physical space and hit their mark. So those are a lot of different areas that I could go. And it's a slow process of figuring out how to solve these problems and think about, what the solutions look like. And then also interaction tools. We've got our Raspberry Pi lamp server that controls the flow of a performance, but we can also have scenes where robots interact with humans or robots interact with their environment through QR codes or barcodes, or interacting through external sensors. And this is an example of a choreographed script for a robot. This is one robot in a 2-robot scene where the signals from the Raspberry Pi, the messages are going into our server script and then parsed out to determine which line or which part of the scene we're in. And so there's a switch case, which basically just says if the message is stop or whatever that instruction is, or start, carry out that command. And then you can just sort of follow along the spaghetti code to actually see how the messages and the communication happens. So this is a robot scene where the robots have to know when to deliver their line, and then when to cue the next robot to deliver their line. And this particular scene, Love Hurts, was inspired by a conversation between Data and his partner about, you know, what would it be like for a robot to be in a relationship with somebody. And then this is an example of the spaghetti code for a skit, Robot Revolution. And this was a skit between a robot and a human. So there was a lot of speech recognition that was expected. So I don't need a switch case. I don't need the server script or anything like that. I just need, you know, that listening for the actor to say his or her line, and then the robot to respond accordingly. And that brings up all the issues with speech recognition, and the robots don't always hear what you think you say. So, and then before I get into a demo, I want to at least acknowledge the robots are expensive, and all the supporting equipment is expensive. And I couldn't do this without a lot of funding and support from the University of Iowa, grants from the American Association of University Women, NVIDIA for donating GPUs and hardware, and then Microsoft employees have collaborated with me on this project as well, and funneled, you know, or channeled some donation money to me. So, and then my human collaborators, Dare, Brian, Jason, Alec, and Heather, are great at coming up with scripts and skit ideas, and being a sounding board. So that's that. So now you can see a picture of the little Cosmo robots. So now what I'd like to do is, let's do a different share to the choreograph program. So this is basically, so I got this idea from a bunch of news broadcasters for agencies associated with Sinclair, the Sinclair Group. They all gave this speech about misinformation and that sort of thing. And so I was inspired to have the robots give that exact same speech. So the first thing I had to do was actually get the text and then put it into this system. So the way that I've structured this choreograph program is the server script is listening for messages from the network. And then this cue line is basically sending or receiving and you know, being part of that communication process. And then within the skit itself is basically everybody's block of dialogue. So this is what I do initially, is I just put the block of dialogue. So these are just say boxes. There's no movement. I just have to listen to the skit. So let's see if hopefully this will work. I'm connected to a live robot. And so if I switch over to the robot, I think this will work. Hopefully.
Hi, I'm Jordan. And I'm Jessie. Our greatest responsibility is to serve our YouTube communities. We are extremely proud of the quality of journalism that Robot News and Reports produces. But we're concerned about the troubling trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country. The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories that just aren't true, without checking facts first. Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. This is extremely dangerous to a democracy. At Rutherford News, it's our responsibility to pursue and report the truth. We understand truth is neither politically left nor right. Our commitment to factual reporting is the foundation of our credibility, now more than ever. But we are robots, and sometimes our reporting might fall short. If you believe our coverage is unfair, please reach out to us by posting on the comments section of this video and posting your concerns. We value your comments. Please identify yourself as a troll, a bot, or a human. We will respond back to you. We work very hard to seek the truth and strive to be fair, balanced, and factual. We consider it our honor, our privilege to responsibly deliver the news every day. Thank you for watching, and we appreciate your feedback. And here's a shout out to our general manager, who just secured a new funding deal with Sinclair Broadcast Group. With their support, we will be able to provide even more fair, balanced, and factual reports. I think we were trying to keep that a secret. We wouldn't want our viewers to assume that our new partnership will have any effect on our impartial and factual news reports. If that last part could be cut from the video, that would be great. Thanks.
So basically what I have to do is listen to the script over and over and over again to make sure that it sounds the way I want it to sound, line by line. And I'm doing this without any movement, because movement just adds an extra complication, extra stress on the robot, etc. So you end up listening to the script until you can dream it. And then what you do is we add movement. So if I open a project, so up to, so now it's going to be adding all of the movement. And again, I'm trying to do this all in with one robot so that I don't have a bunch of coordination going on. The other thing that going through the dialogue over and over again is that any typos, any problems with the network communication and the flow are detected there. So it's easy enough to debug. So at this point now, I've got the same, see if I can make this larger, maybe not. I've got the same configuration and setup, except that now I've got an added set of movements. So I've got the lines the way that I want them, and the timing for the speech is set up. And so I go dialogue by dialogue. If I want deliberate gestures, I will make them, but otherwise I have a gesture library, a random gesture library, so that the robot just picks a random gesture and performs it. So at this point, hopefully the robot is going to cooperate, and let's see if we can get the movement. So I'll do a different share with the robots again. So that now you're seeing that. Let's see this. So I also have to have some way of indicating that the robot is ready to actually run the script. So I use the eyes for that. So when the robot is loading the program, or the program is being loaded on the robot, the lights go down and then the lights go on.
Hi, I'm Danny. And I'm Dakota. Our greatest responsibility is to serve our YouTube communities. We are extremely proud of the quality.
Wait a minute, but you're not seeing that.
That Robot News and World Reports produces. But we're concerned about the troubling trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country. The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories that just aren't true, without checking facts first. Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. This is extremely dangerous to a democracy. At Robot News, it's our responsibility to pursue and report the truth. We understand truth is neither politically left nor right. Our commitment to factual reporting is the foundation of our credibility, now more than ever. But we are robots and sometimes our reporting might fall short. If you believe our coverage is unfair, please reach out to us by posting on the comments section of this video and posting your concerns. We value your comments. Please identify yourself as a troll, a bot, or a human. We will respond back to you. We work very hard to seek the truth and strive to be fair, balanced, and factual. We consider it our honor, our privilege to responsibly deliver the news every day. Thank you for watching and we appreciate your feedback. And here's a shout out to our general manager, who just secured a new funding deal with Sinclair Broadcast Group. With their support, we will be able to provide even more fair, balanced, and factual reports. I think we were trying to keep that a secret. We wouldn't want our viewers to assume that our new partnership will have any effect on our impartial and factual news reports. If that last part could be cut from the video, that would be great. Thanks.
Thanks, Jackie. What a trooper. So once I have all the movements set up, then I split the dialogue up and the roles up into 2 different files or 3 different files and put them all on the robots, and then do one more rehearsal to make sure that the performance is flowing, and then we're ready to go. So that's the process of going from that initial dialogue into finally getting movements for a performance.
Wow, that first of all, Jackie's voice is cool, but a little robotically creepy in that particular text. So now it feels like the robots are taking over the news, and I don't know how I feel about that. But what's really cool about both of these projects, and I'm mindful I have to look at that and not at that, is and kind of why we wanted to put this together today, is that they're 2 really different approaches to combining STEM and performance in STEM and liberal arts, but both really fascinating ways.
Right.
So I'm curious. I probably have a bunch of questions. I know I have a bunch of questions. I'm sure Mary does. Lauren, are there questions from anybody online?
One that Josh already typed an answer, but I think it's
Sure, let's share it.
so it's from Nancy. She said, do you think aspects of this project could be adapted to teach core principles of quantum mechanics to a slightly older group of students, particularly community colleges? Josh already typed an answer, but
Sure. So if you didn't hear online, Nancy asked during Josh's presentation if the work that he's doing could be used to provide support for teaching quantum mechanics to slightly older groups. Josh, I know you typed an answer to that already, but do you want to share a little bit about that answer out loud?
You know, and you were talking a little bit ago about, you know, the connections to pop culture and those kind of pieces. And when you're working on a robot that has that kind of connection to pop culture, you know, there's a lot of things happening there. So, you know, a lot of what I'm teaching is, you know, the 3D printing to the electronics to the coding. But let's just be honest, mechanical operations could be adapted. So if you're teaching a quantum mechanics class, well, of course, you know, you're going to be looking at operations and how far does something move and structure and balance and force and all those other things. And that can obviously be used in a little dome that is doing all of those things inherently. So yeah, it could be definitely adapted. A lot of what I'm doing right now is mostly supporting a middle school to high school to that first year of college in terms of providing a robot that does those kind of things. But, you know, I teach that to my coding classes. They use these domes in a pure coding standpoint. And I had a engineering professor talked to me yesterday about, hey, could we use these domes in just from a pure standpoint of DC wiring? You know, it's more fun to wire up in a little dome than just a normal breadboard. You know what I mean? So he sees that connection as well, and it's just more of an engagement opportunity for students of all levels. You know, so yeah, absolutely could be.
Thanks, Josh. No more questions back there, Lauren. Okay, Mary, do you have any questions that you wanted to share?
I do. I have a question thinking about student learning and outcomes and assessment. So I just want to tap into both of you in terms of what experience do you have in trying to determine how use of the domes and use of the robots have really improved student outcomes, whether that's in coding or just kind of understanding a systems approach towards developing a solution, or maybe even storytelling using STEM artifacts. And that's open to each of you.
Denise, you may go first, or do you want to tackle that first?
I can go first. So as far as the student outcomes go, my goal here is to help students appreciate the challenges with, say, human-robot interaction or human-computer interaction and technology, and how, and algorithmic thinking, how you can take a complex problem and break it down into bite-sized pieces, whether it's how do you tell a story, or how do you program a robot to tell a story, or whatever it is. Algorithmic thinking is beyond, or is not just limited to computer programming. And so when they see process in theater, they can apply that to process in English, process in how to learn a language, process in how to learn in general. So in that regard, I think the outcome is more, well, it's difficult to assess, but it's certainly easy to have it come out in a conversation with students. The other thing that I think is helpful for students is they realize that these robots are not interchangeable. You think, oh, a robotic performance, you do it once and you can always get the exact same result. First of all, gestures, the gestures are random, but the robots have their own internal calibration, so they don't always act the same. So students actually start casting for a performance. They think, oh, Jesse has a better skill set for this role than somebody, than this other robot does. So I think it also gives them appreciation of the technology.
That was one of the, Josh, I'll let you answer that question, but I just wanted to remark that was one of the things I found most fascinating about the robot theater performance is hearing you talk about persnickety robot actors, and sometimes they're ready to go and sometimes they're not. That is absolutely what we deal with in live performance, right? And there's a whole suite of skills to learn just to deal with that. And it's fascinating to think about students learning that in a robotic theater environment.
The notion of troubleshooting is non-trivial.
Right, and it connects the kinds of decision tree thinking that you have to do when managing a production with decision tree thinking in any other kind of situation. It's really kind of fascinating. John, do you want to answer?
Wait, I just want to comment on that. The one thing that consistently students say they learned from this class is troubleshooting. And that was the thing they did not expect to learn from it. But every student says troubleshooting.
Well, I mean, wouldn't you agree that, Denise, that any class you're doing project-based learning, where you're working on a project, one of the core fundamental things we get out of it is critical thinking skills. Students don't realize that coming into the project, but man, does it ever happen, especially if they're big projects. And I'll answer your question here in just a second. I'm teaching a class right now that has individual project-based instruction associated to it, where each student is building an own project of something that they've developed. Now, sometimes that's like a Raspberry Pi security system. And one of my biggest projects this ending semester is a Stargate. It's an actual, from the movie Stargate, that's a spinning piece and things lock in, and I'll be posting it here really, really soon. But it works. And that student has gone through a lot of frustrations and critical thinking skills to build this thing. And so, yeah, we develop those skills. In terms of answering that question about what other students, what outcomes you get, a lot of what I'm trying to do is apply an outcome from a lesson that I'm teaching. So if I'm teaching a student how to code up lights to make lights blink, I'm doing the same thing I'd be teaching from a normal breadboard, but inside of an R2D2 dome. So there's that level of engagement, more of that fun, interesting thing. Instead of just seeing a light blink, it's the lights of R2 blinking, right? Instead of just opening a motor, it's panels opening and things of that nature. And one thing I've found in terms of my project and the work of this open-ended piece that I'm doing with the STEM mini domes is students wanting to do other things. So I'm teaching students how to do this, and they go, hey, what if I open this panel up and then I can have something come out of it? Sounds great. How would you do that? And that becomes that
Mhm.
problem solving, that critical thinking. They're designing something from that. But because I've taught them in an open-ended coding scenario how to hit a button, call a function easily, they can move motors and they can see how that's working. So once you know that one piece, man, you could build a full-size R2 like Rich is working on right now, right? So you could do anything you want to. And that's kind of the idea behind this. Is it's an easy entry. It's a dip your toe into it piece. It's a small little thing that has a lot of things we're doing, but we're breaking that down to manageable lessons. So by the end of it, man, maybe next time your project, you're building a full-size C3PO or something. I don't know, whatever. But that's the deliverables we're looking for.
If we keep mentioning my R2 build, people are going to expect me to finish it. And
I want to
show
see it
off.
by Christmas
Absolutely,
time.
you should
Oh my
finish it.
God. Oh my gosh. Yeah, somehow I got more time for that. Lauren, I think you signaled that you might have some questions. Is that right?
One.
Okay.
So far. What software is being used to program the robots, Denise?
So Denise, I don't know if you heard that, but someone has asked, what is the software used for programming the now robots?
So there's a proprietary software environment called Choreograph.
Okay.
And behind the scenes, it's Python. So you can build your own, you can make your own Python scripts within Choreograph. They are running Python 2.7, which is a challenge because it's no longer being supported, but that's what the robots aren't updating to Python 3. So when I'm using communication over the network, I also have to pay attention to encoding because if I'm using Python 3, I have to send over byte data. But if I'm using Python 2, then it's ASCII. And so, even when I try to incorporate new robots into the fold, the new robots are not going to be on 2.7, they're going to be on 3. So, and I'm always trying to expand because these robots being 10 grand each, Cosmo's $200, I can afford that. And a little Roomba, I can afford that too. And I'm imagining, Josh, have you put the dome on a Roomba? That would be my question.
One of my students today he's built one of the domes. I take him with me to some of the sessions. He would have came with me if I went to Purdue today. He was telling me of what he plans to do with the dome. And that was one of the things he talked about, is putting the dome on top of a little pedestal and moving it around and adjusting it, giving it more.
Okay, I volunteer my Roomba, to have a dome installed on it. Okay, I'm just going to put myself out there
You got it.
make housekeeping fun.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Lauren, are there more questions from the group? Sorry, Josh, go ahead. I interrupted you there.
I was just saying that was a good idea, Denise.
Yeah. I also want to throw out that one of the joys of teaching a class like this, or even just teaching computer science through this medium, is that, as Josh pointed out as well, students are invested. They want to take it one step further, and that's really when you're successful, when you teach them the building blocks and then they want to do more and push the boundaries, and you let them go and you say, yeah, this is great, how would you do it, and support them. That's really what's inspiring.
That's a good point, Denise.
Yeah.
I find that sometimes I feel like I'm just a cheerleader of my students. I'm just there, just encouraging them and celebrating those failures, because as Denise was saying earlier about how things don't work, and students, and we all get frustrated, we all want to give up, and we all want to quit. And man, that's the biggest piece. Just don't quit. Keep pushing forward.
Sure.
And if you can keep pushing forward, eventually you're going to get it. You're going to make that work. And then Rich's R2D2 will just work. You can get, I mean, that's the last time. That's the last time I'll put it out there.
No, you're good. Well, Mary, you've talked about that a lot too, right? The importance of keying into a student's sort of internal connection to whatever they're learning.
Absolutely.
And finding ways to connect to what motivates them so that the learning has some meaning. And that's really what we're talking about.
Yeah, it becomes a force multiplier.
Yeah.
Right. So there's an element of not only a desire to accelerate your own learning so that you can get to that next exciting step, right? But it's building that intention to continue to learn, right? So it's building a value system of, I'm not just going to stop with what I've learned today or in this particular project. Now I'm motivated internally to continue to learn on my own.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, it's just fascinating to me and exciting. Lauren, no more questions, I imagine, right? Well, do you have any more questions that you want to ask, Mary?
I have a million questions, but I'll reserve them for
Okay.
offline.
Well, then, Denise and Josh, thank you both for joining us today. I know that I plan to be downloading the kit from Mr. Badley's site and playing with it pretty soon. And if I had $10,000, I'd be buying a Now robot. But maybe I'll come out to Iowa, and visit Robot Theater in person. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. Thank you all for joining us online. Stay tuned for some announcements about our next First Friday event, which will be in February. We will be joined by John Huntington, the author of Show Networks and Control Systems, to talk about, well, show networks and control systems. Thank you all very much. See y'all later.